morning.
It is morning.
Hold on, I'm pulling up the presentation. Okay, looks like we have more people joining. Great.
Hi.
Good morning. I think Stefano on, he said he was going to be a little late by email, I think, so we can get started. Can everybody see my screen?
We see it.
Okay, great. Welcome. Our standard, we're here to protect data and use, and everybody's welcome, and we're a transparent and collaborative community. Our antitrust policy. Okay, let's talk agenda and see if we want to adjust anything. So after our standard 3 items, I want to give people an update on the webinar, and also encourage people, if they haven't already, to share things on social media and help promote it. We had an item from last week that we didn't get to, which was just to talk about some of the TAC white paper has been published, and there are a few changes to consider on the outreach paper, citations and things like that. Then I think someone, I forgot who raised it, but there was a question around project logos, and we kind of had to cut that short, so I thought we'd finish that conversation. And then I thought I didn't see an email from Stefano around the submitting for chair election, so I wanted to put that back on the agenda and let Stefano describe his plan and when he's going to send that out. And then I think we have some updates on the FOSDEM dev room that we were going to share. Was there anything else anybody wanted to cover or put on the agenda that I missed here? No? Okay. Okay, let's maybe we should table roll call. Scott, I saw Scott Schweitzer. Are you new? Do you want to introduce yourself?
I've introduced myself in the past, but
oh, okay, sorry.
No worries. I'm with Xilinx, so.
Okay. Thank you for attending. And then we have Shiriband. You want to introduce yourself? Hello.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm new at CCC Systems, VP Product, and happy to join.
Okay, welcome.
Thanks.
Are you going to be the ongoing outreach representative for CCC?
Myself and Yassine together.
Okay. Okay, great. Let's go to, Stefano is not here, so let's get into some of our discussions, and then we'll circle back and have roll call on approval of minutes. So he's here to record everything that for those 2 items. Also, I'll wait on action item review. So let's start with webinar prep and promotion. So the webinar is next Tuesday. We had an initial call after last week's outreach meeting with the presenters and kind of worked through what needed to be updated on content. Also, Stefano did some social posts with, we have a social tile from the CCC, and I sent out an email to the TAC general and outreach lists asking people to promote it and with the social links. As of last night, I asked Stefano, and we have 40 registrations, which I thought was pretty good for this point in the process and having no, kind of database of our own to follow up with, other than a few from some of the OSS events.
Sorry, I'm late, Seth.
Okay, I was just updating that. We skipped the roll call and approval of minutes until you were getting here, so an action
Sure, no
item.
problem.
So I was doing an update on the webinar. Do you have any, I think you said the registrations were at 40 last night?
Yeah, they're actually just over 40 this morning. So yeah.
Okay. So what I'd encourage people to do, if you haven't already, is to personally post on social media, send to any of the lists. I saw a couple of people like Dave Taylor from TAC, and I think maybe Ava, you had sent something that you guys had done some posts or sending it to lists. So if you have any other related standards, bodies, or lists, please invite people through that, and then also, try to get your corporate handles to share or do their own posts about the webinar, so that you can we can drive up registrations for this. Any questions? Did everybody get my email? It was last Friday. I'm happy to resend it if you like, with the links to the posts and the draft email. Any questions? Any other ways people can think of to get members to promote it? Okay. In terms of the content, it is, I have posted on Outreach, there's a webinar folder, and the working versions of the content will be in there. We're basically updating the analyst briefing deck, and we did some things to change around a couple of the section order. I think we removed some of the items that like some of the vendor related content that we had a survey of some of those areas. So we're having another meeting right after this one to kind of work on finalizing the content, and then we'll should be ready to go after that. So if you want to see what's going to be presented, you can check the folder later this week, and we should be final kind of by the end of this week. There was one question somebody sent me. We are going to update all the logos so that all the members are reflected on the kind of CCC logo slide. Any other questions? Let's go back to roll call then. So Stefano, do we have quorum? We have a lot of
I
people.
don't believe we do.
Yeah.
Let me just see. Hold on. Yeah, I believe we're one short.
Okay. Okay, and you've recorded everybody who's attending?
Yep, sure have.
Okay, we'll skip the minutes and then do the rest next week. Here are the action items that were in the minutes. So on, you want to just go down any changes on one?
Sure.
Stefan?
I could just give you an update on mine. So the first one, there's been no progress because last week we were pretty busy, but there should be some progress this week. And then I sent out reminders for 4 and 5 yesterday. So I'm hoping to hear back from folks at the LF now that we're all kind of settling from the conference.
Okay. I think after today, I might need a little support from LF in doing some graphics cleanup on some of the slides. Can we maybe set up like a half hour later in the week and I can just go over with them?
Yeah,
what we
absolutely.
want them to do?
Is later in the day okay? Like not 7 to 10?
Yeah, later in the day is fine.
Okay, good.
I'm in Pacific time, so.
Right. Awesome.
Okay. I had no update on 2. Ben's not here, so that's all we have on action items. Okay, let's move on to white paper updates. So the TAC white paper has been published. It's, this is the direct link. People are also welcome to reference that in, the direct link on all of their, if you want to put it in documentation or blogs or anything like that. It is listed on the main page also. So like when you have the webinars page, or sorry, white papers page. So if you go to, let's see. So this read the white paper has both white papers on it now. So I think the outstanding items were for discussion were, do we want to version the outreach white paper? There was a discussion in the TAC and they're doing a little more formal versioning, like with some change control, like what changed in a table. So I guess that was a question to the group, like what do people think we should do in terms of the versioning of the white paper? Right now, it shows it just shows a month at the top. So for example, well, it's taking a long time to load, sorry. So right now there's a July 2020 on the title page as the version. Also, I was looking for, Stefano, are you sure this is the latest version of it, including the like blockchain edition we made?
I can double check, but I believe, yeah, we verified that this was correct.
Okay, so let me just check that because I was looking for it the other day and I didn't see blockchain and I was confused because I was under the same impression. Yeah, I don't see the blockchain. I mean, we had mentioned blockchain before, but there's a whole new section in the.
Right. Let me double check with the Google Doc, and I'll see if there's a section missing, and maybe either just the wrong file got posted, or yeah, I'll go back and check.
Okay.
I feel like we did this on like another outreach call. But yeah, let me.
We updated everybody that it had been updated to include the blockchain version, but then I went back now and I don't see it. So
okay, yeah. I'll double check and make sure that they have the latest updated version there.
Okay, any thoughts on the versioning? I know Ava, you were involved in the discussion with the TAC. Did you? I believe their conclusion, was that they were going to have a more formal one, like more like academic papers.
Yep. My suggestion was that we do the same. When we need to rev this, we call the next one 1.1.
Okay, so replace it here with a version number.
I mean, I wouldn't replace it. I would include it. It's still useful to also know the date that it was published.
Okay. I guess version 1.0 would have been the original one we published, and then 1.1 would be the version with the blockchain additions.
I'd have to check the Google Doc, but I think you're correct.
Okay. Okay, is everybody else okay with that approach? I'll match the TAC approach on versioning. Remind me, is TAC doing like a change control table? I don't know if that's necessary for us.
It will be doing that, but yeah, I agree. I don't think it's necessary at this level.
Okay. Okay, so let's keep a version number, but not a change control log. Any other opinions on that topic? Okay. I think one of the other things, we have a new, I think there's some citations, particularly in the kind of section that describes the definition of confidential computing, that pointed to our old scoping page. So I think we wanted to redo the citations to point to either the TAC white paper or the new scoping document. So I think we just need to do that. Any thoughts on that? Ava, should we just go through the same Google Doc and track changes to fix that?
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Do you want to do that, or should we just ask Stefano to do that, or do you want me to go in and do that? How should we attack?
I don't have the list of citation changes on hand, so if either of you do, please go right ahead.
Okay. Well, maybe we should just verify. I didn't get anything. I think it was just mentioned, so somebody probably just needs to go look through it, see where those items are cited, and then go make the changes, and then ask Dave to confirm.
Yeah, I can take an action item. That's fine. I think the scoping document is going to be put in PDF form and posted probably on GitHub. Okay. So it's possible that the link just needs to be updated. So yeah, I'll take that action item.
Okay. Okay. And can you just verify with Dave that the correct citations are changed and that kind of a thing?
Yeah, will do.
Okay. The last item, I thought it might be useful at the end to have a pointer to the TAC white paper. What do you guys think about that? Like if somebody kind of gets to the end here.
For additional information, go read this.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe like a banner at the top of the last page or something like that. If that makes sense, we can also ask.
Yeah.
What do you think?
On that last page you just had up?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, here.
Yep. All right, we've got the further reading references. I would not bury it there since those are links outside or largely outside of our domain. I'd put it, like I said, at the top of the page, just under the heading. I'd put in a little call box and say, the consortium has also published a more technical analysis of this available over here.
Okay. Yeah. I agree. Any other thoughts on that? If not, we can ask maybe Stefano, you can get that all done in one shot with the checking the blockchain, changing the citations, and then adding that pointer.
Sure. Yeah, we'll do.
It might be good to have the creative, like have them do something visual with it too, like a banner or a call out box or something so that it pops a little bit.
Do you want to provide an example of what you're talking about? Because I think if you give them something to go off of, they'll probably be able to do that. I'm just not sure what you mean by a banner.
So like a box that's like has color and some text inside it rather than it just being like black text on white. So I don't have an example myself, but
Okay.
Just ask them to do something that highlights it.
Okay, that calls it out as different.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if somebody's scanning the page, they notice it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one, which was I think this is a quick discussion. I think people were in favor last week of if projects that are coming, we have a large list of projects that are in the kind of, forgot what we called the state, but the, have a proposal to join as an open source project that are not fully joined yet. So some of them don't have logos or branding. So I think last week somebody proposed offering that as a service to new projects, which I think people were generally supportive. But let's open that up. I think we kind of talked about it in like 1 or 2 minutes. So I wanted to give a little more time for discussion on that. Any thoughts? And maybe Ben's not here, but Ava, like Open Enclave has a logo already, correct?
We would still love creative help with a better one. And if there is a desire, as other foundations have done, to do somewhat consistent logos, I think we would discuss it, but be open to considering that. Certainly don't consider our current logo final.
Okay.
Ben is here. I'm here.
Oh, you joined. Great.
I was going to say we also have quorum now since Ben is here. But another good point is NARCS did reach out for some help, not in changing their logo, but rather in getting them some graphic design help with, I think it was their logo on the LinkedIn or YouTube site, something like that.
It was the LinkedIn.
Basically just creating a banner. So
yeah, it was
same sort of idea.
Yeah, LinkedIn header. That's what it was.
Yeah, there you go.
And well, the history on the NARCS thing is as simple as we just had an intern hired at Red Hat, and we just said, hey, why don't you go off in a room and come up with a couple ideas and come back. That's literally how we did it. Person just luckily had some really good ideas. So we could definitely do well with creative, but the other thing we could do if we wanted to is we could turn it into a little bit of a contest among the academic community. I'm sure some students would probably get excited about doing it. Don't have to obligate ourselves to use it, but at least it would open it up and be another way to kind of get people more aware of who we are.
Okay. Let's maybe talk about the concept that Ava raised of whether we want some part of, some CCC branding integrated into the logos as a standard or not. I don't have any experience in that with other foundations. So Ava, is there a particular, was it CNCF or some other group that does that?
To my knowledge, CNCF has not done that. The OpenStack, now Open Infra Foundation, did that, though they did that as sort of a rebranding exercise about 6 years into the foundation's existence. Once they were pretty well established and had large number of projects and a very active foundation staffed PM conference running group, they were able to do that over a span of about 6 to 12 months, go through rebranding, work with each project, come up with a bunch of options like Ben was describing. There were some calls for input. Then their creative team went and built logos, and then there was voting within each project to review the proposed logos and pick one. But it was a whole thing. It wasn't just a quick little bit of work. So I'd say let's weigh how much effort we want to put in now versus simply asking the LF creative team to be available if a project wants to opt in and ask for assistance. I think that's a much more lightweight option that might suit our needs better today.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you rather than doing, potentially 8 branding exercises at the same time. And
yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good service to provide all the projects, right? Because they all need something. And
the other point I'd like to make is that I am not suggesting we force this upon projects at this point in the foundation's growth curve.
Yeah, make it an optional thing to provide as a service as opposed to you need a logo.
Yep.
At what point of the process would we provide the LF creative service?
I believe after it's like completed. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to do like expend resources until, you know, everything is resolved in terms of legal paperwork and all of that.
Yeah, I would say after a project has joined, it's gone through all the whatever trademark review and paper signing has to happen. That in that process, I've seen this only a few times, but it has happened in other foundations that a trademark conflict does get uncovered and something has to be renamed. So I would wait until after all the legal whatever gets done before making a creative creation available.
Yeah, and you know, just given the number of projects that are joining, if everybody took advantage of that, that might result in an increase in our tier of and expenditure on creative services, right? So, you know, I think both from a, like, you don't want to start doing things, you know, doing concrete things like branding for people until they're completely signed off, would be my opinion.
Yeah, this is Dave. I just joined a little bit, just listening into what you guys are talking about. This all sounds great to me. The other lever that we have, and I'm not suggesting any particular answer right now, but another lever that we have is whether we make any distinction by project stage. So for example, if you have a research project and a sandbox project, we can make a different rule than say a production project in the incubation stage.
Okay.
In terms of, you know, budgetary stuff or whatever it is. Again, I don't have any particular proposal. I'm just saying that's another distinction. If we had budgetary constraints, then we could use that.
Okay. I mean, until we have budgetary constraints, I don't know if we need to restrict it.
Right, right, exactly. I don't think we have budgetary constraints right now, but.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be a matter of you make it optional once they've kind of joined, especially if they're at the first stage, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But if they've kind of gone to maybe the second stage, I think we need to say, you need a logo because we want to make sure that we have a better way to brand you. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the style of conversation we could have, you know, optional versus CCC request or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And then Ben, on your idea around like incorporating outside people into it, I think that should probably just be a project by project thing. And
sure,
you know, like if you want to do that instead of using Linux Creative Services, I think that's fine on a project by project basis. Or if you want to take the submissions and incorporate them into, you know, options for the Linux with Linux Creative Services, then that's also.
So I might have missed it, but let me ask it the dumb question in the room. Is there a project that needs a logo right now, or has a preference for logo that's gone past the legal stage?
Well, I was just going to say that right now, we have 2 projects that have made it all the way through the process and 6 more that are in the pipeline. The 2 projects that have made it through the process already have logos. The 6 more that are still in the pipeline, I don't think they do, but the point is they haven't made it through the pipeline. So no, I don't think there's anything imminent from what I'm hearing.
Well,
yeah,
I would say that
yeah,
Open Enclave would be interested in getting you know, some assistance from creative. It's not an urgent need, but it'd be great.
I think we should move ahead on that then.
Okay.
Okay.
I move ahead on that unless somebody objects.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is there's consensus around making Linux Creative Services through the amount, you know, what we contract for available to the projects to produce their own logo and, you know, maybe branding, lightweight branding guide. And then, you know, it's up to the projects to either take advantage or not take advantage of that initially, and then we'll kind of assess the amount of work that's required. And if there's a budgetary constraint, we can look at whether it's only certain levels of projects or not. But
So
for now,
this all sounds great, and I would love for Seth you to report this out to the TAC. The only question that I would have is the budget for the project's logos, would that come out of outreach budget or TAC budget?
Well, we already pay a flat fee to Linux Creative Services, so it would come out of that.
You're saying it's not on a per logo basis, it's a flat fee for all logos?
It's a flat fee for a certain amount of work creative services work on an ongoing basis. So kind of look at it like a retainer that comes
I see.
along with a certain level of work.
So the incremental cost is 0 is what you're saying.
Yeah. So
Cool.
if
Love
all, if we get like 8 projects doing logos, I'm sure they're going to ask us to move up to the next tier, which would probably be fine if we were using it. So.
But at least for the foreseeable future, there's no budgetary ask for either outreach or tech, it sounds like, because it's already an outreach, but past
Correct.
funding. Okay.
There may be in the future once people take advantage of it, depending on how many people do and how much time it takes creative services.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Okay. But at the moment, we've only used creative services for like white paper layout and maybe some kind of social media tile and a little website work, right? Stefano. So I think we're not at a point where we're exceeding our retainer.
I don't believe so, no. And I think what I can do too is just chat with Craig and get a feel for how are we using it, and if we were to add these services, does that sound about right? Because he really, I think he sort of takes this as it comes and tries not to confine us ahead of time, but rather just say, start sending me work, and then when I start getting overwhelmed, I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good. Did you say we have quorum now that Ben arrived?
We do.
Ben's like the swing boat that when he shows up, we have. So let's go back. Does anybody have any objections or abstentions for the minutes from last week? Okay, then we will go ahead and pass the minutes for 10:28. And I presume you've updated the recording to include Ben as attending.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, then let's go back to, outreach chair elections. I brought this up like really quickly at the end of last meeting when we were running out of time. Stefano, I think you were gonna send some information. I don't think you've done that yet, correct?
Sorry about that. No, I haven't.
Okay.
I can get that started this week.
So just for everybody, give them a quick review. You send out an email that's like a call for nominations, and then go over the process again so we can.
Right, it's a pretty straightforward process. The nomination, so I'll make a call for nomination this week, and we'll give everyone a week to nominate folks. Seth, I believe you've already mentioned you're already standing again, so I'll request that you send me again. I have your bio, but your statement of intent, and so I'll add your statement of intent, and then anyone else who also nominates themselves or someone else, I'll add theirs. And so next week I'll send out an email with the total nominations. We can all decide as a group if there's only one nomination, we get to decide if we want to actually hold a vote.
Okay, so
for example, the governing board just did. They held a vote, even though Steve Wally was the only candidate.
Okay, and then if there are other people standing, there's like a email-based voting process like last year.
Correct. Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, it'll be the same as last year.
Yeah. I would propose we do the vote no matter what, just as a means of transparency and record keeping.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
practice.
I think that's the reason the governing board did as well.
Yeah, I would just follow the lead.
I have a clarifying question regarding all the elections, not just for outreach. In our charter, does it stipulate who is entitled to vote in each election?
Let me see. I have the charter hyperlink.
Yeah, I don't believe it does. It's been a while since I've read through the charter end to end, but I believe it only calls it out for the governing board and allows the committees to run themselves however they choose.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was the relevant snippet right here. So it doesn't really specify, and I think the precedent from last year was that the governing board delegated the responsibility, doing the election to the outreach committee, and then we use the same process. So I think my understanding was that it was the voting members, like the premier members representatives who held the vote. Is that?
I think there is also the non-premier members. There is a representative to per every, I forgot what if it was per every 8 or 10 individuals or per organization.
Yeah, so there's a general member representative who I don't know if that, last year there wasn't one of those. So I don't think, that person would have voted in the outreach ones specifically. I don't know whether they would or not in the.
I think we should try to include those people. I know they may not always attend, but especially if we're voting on email, there's no reason why they couldn't participate and have their vote counted.
As one vote through the general member representative, or as,
right.
Yeah, okay. That's fine with me.
Clarification there, but I'm willing to look to Stefano to help us identify.
Yeah, maybe help us resolve these issues. And I think that the charter is not very specific about how it's conducted. So if you could do a little research and.
Sure. Yeah, I'll chat with Scott, but I believe the reason it's not specific in terms of the committees is it leaves governance up to those committees.
Okay, so I just pasted into the chat the charter that says the outreach committee will include 1 appointed voting representatives from each premier member. Each general member may appoint a non-voting representative to observe and contribute ideas to the outreach committee. It does not have any notion in the charter of the general members getting a voting representative. And so the general members all are non-voting. It's different from how it works in the board.
Yep. Thank you, Dave. That was my recollection as well. I was trying to read the screen. So given, it seems like we have the list of who is entitled to have a vote in this election.
Which would be the premier members.
Yep.
Yeah.
Voting representatives to the outreach committee.
Yeah. And by the way, that answer is actually the same for the TAC. So.
Okay. So I think we move ahead on this. Question, Dave, to you. Is TAC looking at changing that at all in the near future?
No.
Okay.
Although the only difference between the outreach and the TAC from my reading is that the part that's on Seth's slide, it's not possible for the governing board to appoint, right? The chairperson of the TAC is always elected by the TAC themselves. That's really the only difference that I see. But the same thing is true. The one clarification that we had last year that we all agreed that it was within the intent of the charter was that a general member may still run as the chairperson. The chairperson does not need to be one of the voting representatives. It could be one of the general member non-voting representatives that becomes chair. And so, for example, I think Seth is in that category, right?
Yeah.
And so we all agreed that yes, that's perfectly reasonable that the chair could be anybody, but the people that elect the chair are the voting members.
I think that is fair also in outreach, and I'd like to have a discussion, though it doesn't have to be today, we can table this for next time, about election or appointed cadence. Many foundations want to avoid the potential for a large turnover in any one cycle of members, not the chairperson. So I'd like to bring that up for next time.
Could you explain that a little bit more? So I just understand the scope of the discussion. I don't understand.
Yeah. So the risk in an election or let's say all of the voting members of outreach or TAC or governing board were to change in the same month, there would be a break in continuity of context, knowledge, procedure if that were to happen. And so many bodies like this appoint people in a cadence. So half the people start in January and half the committee starts in June, or half starts in 1 year and half starts in the next year with a 2-year duration of their appointment.
Okay, so you're like staggering the elections for the different committees to avoid all of them changing chair people at the same time.
Correct. We're young enough that, you know, isn't an issue, but the questions that were raised just now, we're able to answer them because we have that continuity, we have that history of knowledge in current appointees. But if that were lost, since this wasn't as clearly written down or as readily available, we'd have to go, it'd take more work to go find it. It's good to make sure that the cultural knowledge is preserved longer than a single election cycle.
That's a great point. I think that the governing board should be off cycle from the TAC and outreach.
So interestingly, the original CCC charter only had a period on the TAC chair. The TAC chair said it was annual. The board and outreach chair don't say. The board just passed a resolution, and that was a charter amendment about a month ago, that the board chair is also annual, right? Just it didn't say, and the board said we should probably say. And so Stephen made the proposal, and it passed. And so, but the outreach still doesn't say. And so, in other words, until it says you can change whenever month it is or your term or whatever, and then outreach, you're still free to do that, especially since you always have the out of the appointing thing, that you can set whatever rules you want right now. If you wanted to go off cycle, if you want to make it be a year and a half for a particular one in order to get off cycle, you can do that. So.
Well, annual is annual. It doesn't necessarily say when the election occurs.
That's correct. Although, no, that is a good observation, because you could say annual does not mean that the term is 12 months, right? Annual, you could still have a term of 18 months and be annual, right? For a particular term. So the TAC interpreted it as that means that the term is 1 year when it says annual. And since the election was done for the TAC last year, 2019 November, concluding at the end of 2019 November, then the TAC is planning on doing another election in November, like starting momentarily. So the board did it in October of 2019, so the board was doing it now. The TAC is shortly following the board by a couple weeks. But outreach, again, that was just us interpreting the word annual as being a term of 12 months, but it's a good observation that it doesn't have to be strictly 12 months if you want to read it that way.
And I think in this case, the board had the vote for Stephen having another term. Is that correct? Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
so,
I just haven't announced it yet.
I mean, this particular year, it's not, continuity wouldn't be an issue, but in the future, maybe that's a good approach to take. So, okay, well, we can maybe discuss the timing of the elections and have more discussion on that next. I guess we need to decide that though before Stefano initiates the, if there's a proposal to not have it in November, then we would, not take that step, right? I think the precedent's been annual, and that was my expectation. So I would, I'm open to other proposals, but I think the default would be we have it in November as we planned. Other thoughts?
I only have, Ava's statements are correct. I think in cases where you have multiple elected people to the same board, it gets easier because then you just do half each particular cycle. And so you can have multiple boards change at the same time because at most half of the people are joining. But that doesn't happen here. It's just electing the chair. And so one could also take the argument, and this isn't as strong of an argument, but that the continuity is provided by the board itself, by the board members themselves. And so even if the chairs all change at the same time, then at least their continuity is there at the board level, meaning at the outreach committee level, the TAC level, and the board level, even if all three chairs were to change at the same time. And so it's not as bad, but it's still the principle that Ava mentioned, I agree with.
Okay. Ava, do you want to make any other proposal for this particular election, or were you thinking about discussing it for future elections?
No action at this time. I was just proposing that we talk about that and think about that over the next several meetings. It might not be pertinent until the next election. It might be something we want to think about as far as, yeah, no action right now.
Okay.
I think it might be something, Seth, that between Stefano and you and me that we bring up in the next board meeting when the election results of the board chair and staff are kind of reported out. We could say, hey, outreach had, Seth, you could say, hey, outreach, we had this discussion. What does the governing board think? Because it does affect all three things together, right? So that's why I said surfacing the question to the governing board is probably a good thing.
When is the next governing board meeting?
Stefano, do you have it?
It is the 19th of November.
Okay, so do we want to table the election until the 19th, or is that your suggestion, Dave? And then bring it up on the governing board call?
I was not proposing delaying your election until then. That's up to you if you want to propose that. I was just saying, regardless, I think if there's because I think Ava, you said there's no proposal this time. But that means if you're going to go ahead with the election, I still think we should bring it up that says, hey, there was this question. What does the governing board think? Do you have any thoughts on this, even if it's for next time around? So,
Okay.
But I'd say it's up to you, outreach, whether you want to have the election or go ahead with it or wait until after the 19th. So.
And just to be clear, make sure there's no doubt, I'm not proposing we delay the election right now, merely that after the election, we think about this to ensure continuity.
Okay, well, let's then go ahead with the election. Stefano, if you can send out the clarifications, confirm the people who vote and send out the call for nominations and kind of the process, then let's move forward with it then. And then we'll ask the governing board to add it to the agenda just to raise the question for future elections. Okay,
good.
Let's move on. So we had some updates. I kind of summarized it here, but Ava, do you want to, I think through Jethro, we identified the person running the dev room or proposing to run the dev room again, who had done the confidential computing related dev room last year and made contact, and he kind of welcomed our help. So that was kind of the plan A from the discussion last week. Ava, anything you wanted to add to that?
That's a good summary. What I'm assuming the dev room gets in, which Joe thought is very likely, considering he ran it last year, it's only more popular this year. I also think it's likely. Then we, the outreach committee, could help promote the event, help with the CFP. It sounds like Joe already has the experience and the enough volunteers to run the actual event, and our engagement would just be making sure that we get notice out to all of our projects and related projects to say, hey, you should submit.
Okay, so that was a good outcome, kind of what we were preferring. So we'll, I guess, provide an update again, when we find out the dev room's accepted or not, and what specifically we need to do and by what time to help. Are there any, Ava, were there any other CFPs, or I know you had any other ones that we need to bring up for discussion now because they're imminent?
Yeah.
Or we need time?
So for the FOSDEM schedule itself, I think I'm trying to pull up that timing right now. The dev rooms should be confirmed relatively soon. So that might be actions for folks to take over the next month. As far as other conferences, last time I mentioned LinuxConf Australia, but I have not chased that down. I don't think there was a dev room for, or a mini, what they call a mini conf for confidential computing last year. And it seemed like our consensus as a group last week was that we don't have, or we're not going to try to run an entire mini conf or dev room ourselves. So our action might be simply to, again, encourage projects to go submit talks to LCA.
And do you know if there's a deadline for LCA for submitting talks or dev room?
The dev room, they call a mini conference, track submission deadline is, I believe, this week. But the content submission deadline will be about a month from now. So after they confirm the mini conferences, then each mini conf runs its own CFP.
Okay.
Google Docs form here on the slide is for what?
That's for submitting additional. We went over it last week. There's a form that Stephanie created for submitting events that we might want to participate in, and then we were gonna, on a regular basis, kind of review those events and see if there's any action we need to take.
Okay, I was confused because I was under the impression that was for FOSDEM specifically, but that's the form which is.
This is the form for submitting all events.
Okay.
Which I just left on there from a previous slide, just for reference. We haven't really had a comprehensive review of all the things submitted in the form, and I think Ava had a list running of events. I think Ben was going to check on the Red Hat related events, and everybody else is welcome to submit events that are relevant to confidential computing through that form. And the idea is that we'll go through them and see, do we want to sponsor? Do we want to encourage, either do like an overview panel of confidential computing, which Outreach could coordinate, or do we want to encourage TAC to submit more technical talks, or open source projects to submit more technical talks to any of these events?
And I would just call out that the LCA call for sessions in the main conference, as well as the call for mini conference, that closes in 2 days. So if you want to be on the main stage, you have 2 days to submit for that. And if you or your project would like to be in a mini conference instead, the CFP for those will open up probably in about 2 weeks.
Okay. Ava, it might be good to send out just like a link to it onto the outreach list for anybody who's not here, just to give it some visibility if you have it.
Sure.
Because I think, part of our role is just to make people aware of it and then get more people submitting confidential computing related talks in general. Okay, let's move on and just give something on the, so we had election for outreach. Share update. We probably do want to do a results / recap of the webinar, which will have happened the day before our next meeting. Any other topics people want to maybe the update on the, well, we don't really need to talk about the, well, I guess we need to confirm the white paper changes are made.
I actually confirmed that on the call, but I'll go ahead and make sure that the link to the scoping document gets updated. So if you click on the link now, you will see the blockchain stuff.
Okay. any other items for next week that I missed? Okay, well, I'll default to these on the agenda next week. If you have any other things that come up, please let me know and I'll be happy to add them. Okay, we'll end a few minutes early. We have some discussion about the webinar content next, so I'm going to jump to that. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.